Nugget.
Nuggets with Sharon and Johnny. After doing all this justice work and all this reproductive justice work, then I started getting into entertainment and arts and producing my own stuff. And I saw the power that could have. And then I started to bring the worlds together. So my first gig was being brought in to do this anti-stigma campaign. And like, that's all they had. They were like anti-stigma. And I was like, all right, stigma, like, I don't even know for sure what that is, but let's look it up. And I looked it up and the synonym was shame. And I had just started this journey, which kind of goes to one of these other questions and something that we had talked about earlier of the internalized piece of this. I had started this journey as a queer person. When I was young, a seed of shame was planted in me, that something was wrong
Mhm,
with me. And that seed of shame
mhm.
grew and its tendrils got into all kinds of spots within me. And I came to a
Yeah.
realization at this time, and it was like I was like mid 30s maybe, that seed of shame was not mine and all the results of that were not mine. And so I went about a shame extraction process to try to
Yes,
find
yes.
all the places
Oh.
in me. And at some point I pulled it out. I pulled the shame ball out of my heart chakra. I mean, we'll talk about that sometime. um but it
I'm
was,
still there. I'm still in that
are
process as
you in
far
that
as like,
process? I would,
oh,
if you need any companionship or any of that in that, I would love to be there with
oh
you.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Thanks.
at the same time, I got the chance to run this campaign. And so what we ended up focusing on, because it was HIV dollars, it was at this public health agency, we ended up focusing on healthcare agencies to create environments where LGBTQIA plus individuals of color could actually find an affirming, loving, welcoming, and deeply so healthcare environment. And
Yes.
so what we ended up doing was doing some storytelling with individual LGBTQIA plus individuals of color to tell their own stories. We partnered them with filmmakers to tell their own stories about experiencing stigma in a healthcare setting, and then we
Ah,
showed those
yeah.
videos to the healthcare providers. Um,
Yes.
so that the individuals didn't have to keep coming and reliving their story, but also we didn't tell their stories on their behalf,
Right.
right? And
Right.
so I always framed it when I talked about it, if we are taking marginalized voices and we're bringing them to the center of our organizational transformation, of the transformation of our institution. The reason
Yeah.
that these voices are on the margins is because we didn't consider them when we set up our institutions and practices. So if we want to create environments where they are actually seen and heard and feel that, we need to take those voices and bring them to the center of that transformation journey. And so I think that's the thing, is when they live on the margins, the voices are not heard when we shape our things because they're not right, we are. And so we step back, we bring those voices and experiences into the center, and we have them lead us in the transformation work that we're called to.
It it is really hard for me to say this because I don't want your white ego to get too big. But you are doing it. You're killing it, Johnny.
Thanks.
You really are.
Thanks.
I'm really just I'm like I'm proud to be a fellow human being of yours.
Ah,
Like that's really it's you're yeah,
thank,
you're doing that shit, man.
thank
And I just see how, you know, um those folks at the those fucking people at the Engler and their goddamn genius.
you. Yeah.
They knew that this was gonna be a good conversation
Yeah.
because they knew you had to fucking practice. They knew.
Thanks. 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 I haven't always, right? I haven't always. So I was steeped in this work early on in social work. So my first, my graduate study was in racial justice in these intergroup dialogues of like creating
No, no, no. What?
creating.
No. Okay. Your graduate work was in what, bitch?
It was in these intergroup dialogues where white people and people of color spent 10 weeks together creating a relationship and environment where we can pull our baggage out, open it up together, sort through it, learn on our own, learn from each other,
You
and create new ways
really
of being.
wow. You're just now telling me this? He is just now telling me this.
Oops.
Wow.
So
So you've basically been like CrossFitting.
So I did, and then I went into reproductive justice work or reproductive rights work, and tried to integrate these practices in, and sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. I remember I had a boss who was like, "Oh, you don't need to worry about, I thought that a person of color needed to be hired for a position, and she was like, "Oh, well, you're gay, so you're fine, you can do it." And I was like, no, actually, it's not just about
That
checking a
takes a
box.
lot of humility. No, no,
Yeah,
no. And that takes a lot of humility because there's a
yeah,
lot of white people would be like, yeah, I can take it.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
know. I can
Uh-uh,
relate. Blah, blah, blah.
uh-uh.
You did. So you've been practicing being a minority in your circles for a long time. You did reproductive rights work?
Yeah, and then reproductive justice. So then I fell in with these like amazing, especially women of color, who brought social justice together with reproductive rights, and really looked at it from a reproductive justice lens, which is like the right to access care is one piece of it, or the right to have care. But if you can't access it, then it doesn't mean anything, right? And so then they brought me back into the practice to say, this needs to be a part of everyday life. And then when I went into arts and entertainment, again, I lost that practice, and I, produced a couple of shows with mostly white people. And then I was like, wait a minute, I got called back to that practice. Right. And so, like, with all my privilege, I have a chance to fall out. And I want to set up systems where I don't have the chance to fall out. I want to create cultural environments where I cannot fall out, where I always have people around me doing this work, right? And so that if I'm not doing the work, it's out of the norm. That's my dream. That's my vision, at least for how we can be as a people.